The greatest leaders in business look for the emerging stories in their organization and use the data to choose their preferred outcome. What outcome do you want in your business? Listen to the stories of industry veterans, coaches, and consultants so you can choose your preferred business outcome. Welcome, everyone. We're on a brand new episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. Gosh, that's really long. I call it BBSE for short. But the whole point is that a number of years ago, as a leader myself, having started multiple companies, I used to always think I needed to be the smartest person in the room. And then I realized after a little while, I hang around a bunch of smart people too. I can't be smarter than all 50 of them. So how am I going to keep up if I am always have to be smarter? And I started realizing, you know what? What's actually more effective for me as a leader is, do I have 50 people, I don't know if you can still use the word Rolodex, 50 people in my contacts on my phone that I can pick up and say, hey, so what have you figured out in the last 25 years? You can help me solve that problem in 3 minutes. Those are my blind spots, the things that I'm not really good at. I've got one thing that I'm fantastic at, but I like to have my Rolodex or contact list of people who are good. This show is all about trying to find out what those blind spots are so that you have that Rolodex or a set of contacts that you can call and say, hey, summarize 25 years in 3 minutes for me. And I'm really excited today because I've got Courtney on the phone or on the line connected via Zoom today. Courtney, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because there's so many parallels that I've drawn in my life between my career playing lots of sports, high school and college and other places, leagues and stuff. And there's so many similarities between leadership and kind of what I did on those teams and how I run my business today. Have you ever seen that connection made before?
Yeah, I think there's really no separation in my world from athletics and in life. And the parallels they're marketable, they're tangible, and they're important.
So let me do a little bit of background because I want people to understand a little bit about who you are. And I want to first start out with, I got a chance to meet Courtney at a Down syndrome event with a local organization called Gigi's Playhouse. And I got a chance to be there because my youngest happens to have Down syndrome, but he got a chance to play basketball with the women's UNC basketball team. What an incredible opportunity. We got to go see the locker rooms. We got to do some drills with them. We had some music going. We did some dancing and stuff. Just what an incredibly inspiring event. You run a championship basketball team, high caliber team, but still you have time for this and kids too. I'm not quite sure how you put it all together.
Well, like you said, the interconnectedness and which matters. And, service is a buzzword that people like to say, but I think it's more than that. It's about connection. Right. And so our college athletes are like anybody else. They're just seeking different connections and they find energy from different connections. And, they've been here all summer doing their summer training with campus kind of being a skeleton of its normal self. And so they're taking a little bit less class and there's a lot less going on campus. So there is more time. But with that means there's less connection. And so it really filled the cups of our Gigi's Playhouse friends, and it also filled the cups of my program in that they got to be reconnected with the happiness that is in the young people's heart, and they got to feel connected to other people and their journey. So it was really fun. It was a Friday night, which typically you think we'd want to stay away from, but as we always say, you choose your date on Friday, and we chose a good date that night.
Oh, it was definitely a lot of fun. So when I proposed this idea of having Courtney on the podcast, I came up with a title, which I want to tell you the title. Coaching is about having a clear and common cause that each player can be part of. I think a direct carryover to what happens in business. And I want to tell people a little bit more about your background, sort of the accolades, because, there's a lot. Courtney Banghart was honored by Fortune magazine in 2015 as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders and head into your fourth season as the women's basketball coach at University of North Carolina. Impressive accolade in and of itself. 15 seasons as a head coach, overall record of 308 wins, 135 losses. Pretty impressive record there. Led the Tar Heels to the 2022 NCAA Tournament Sweet 16. 2015 Naismith National Coach of the Year. He led Princeton to 7 Ivy League title wins. gosh, here's some of the stuff that became really interesting to me is you earned a bachelor's degree in neuroscience from Dartmouth, and you got a master's degree in writing and leadership while serving as an assistant coach at from 2003 to 2007. Tell me a little bit of the story of Courtney in terms of how all that came together and leads to a championship team.
Yeah, the story is unique. And I was a graduated from college and I became a high school coach down in Episcopal High School in Alexandria, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And when they were looking for a coach, I said, I'm not moving to Washington, D.C. to coach basketball, right? I got an Ivy League degree and I'm ready to roll. Well, they offered me to teach a class and to be the interim girls athletic director because the current one was on maternity leave. So as the deal got sweeter in terms of opportunities to have an impact, I ended up taking it and moved down there. And after my second year, my former coach at Dartmouth offered me to come back to be an assistant. And I said, no way, I'm so happy. After my third year, she asked me again. And I thought, gosh, if I want to get into being an athletic director or a school head or something, getting a master's paid for is pretty attractive. So I had applied to Harvard School of Education. I had gotten in and I called my family and I said, I'm going to Boston. I'm going to the Harvard School of Education, to which my dad said, who's paying for that? And I was like, oh God, not you. So I went back to the school and asked if they'd pay for it. And they said, yes, as long as you give us 7 years of service afterwards. That felt a little bit like spending my entire 20s in one journey, right? So I asked the Dartmouth coach at the time, would you pay for my master's if I came up and did the job? And she said, yeah. So I went back and did my master's, and in the same 1 week period, after 4 years, I turned 29, defended my master's thesis, got a job call from the athletic director at Princeton, and found out that I was a finalist for the Amazing Race. And here I was thinking, what do I do? And I was going to go on with my brother to the Amazing Race, to which when I called him, he said, we were going to do that if we didn't have a job. You now have a job offer. And I reached out to a bunch of my peers in the business and I asked about, gosh, I've only been coaching for 4 years in college. Is this a good job? And most of my peers, I'll be honest, they said no. They said, it's career suicide if you're not successful and you're a little young, you don't have a lot of experience. And I've always lived my life this way, that the fear of failure pales in comparison to the feel of missing out on an opportunity. Yeah. Right. And I thought, God, I might as well find out now if I'm actually good at it. And if I'm not, I still have enough time to create something else in my professional journey and turn the page, as opposed to being an assistant for many years. And you don't even know if you're good at the job you're trying to get. So I went down to Princeton. They had never been to an NCAA tournament. And fast forward, we won a whole lot of games at Princeton, won 7 of our last 8 Ivy League titles, went to 8 NCAA tournaments. And ended up getting the job offer to come to Carolina. And it was the same thing. It was, gosh, if you stay, you'd be in the Hall of Fame, you have job security, you're winning all the time, versus like, oh my gosh, this is a totally different thing. And it comes with all this risk. And it does, right? Any journey that takes a turn is a risk. But what it also comes with is an opportunity for a new experience and not only new growth, but new highs. You forget the highs sometimes if you only think about the lows. And so fast forward, I'm entering my 4th season, and it hasn't been easy, but it's been a beautiful thing and highly successful so far.
So there's a couple of things I'm hearing throughout the course of this. It doesn't seem like, and I don't think this is usually ever the case for anyone, you plan on a path, it didn't go exactly that way. Kind of things just sort of, doors just opened, and you had to decide at that point in time, do I walk this doorway or not? But it has led you down this path that has led to some personal success, some, I think, fulfillment is what I'm hearing a little bit in your voice as well. Right? If I went to Michael Jordan right now and said, hey, teach me to play Michael Jordan level basketball, for example, and I think he would kind of scratch his head for a moment and go, I'm not quite sure how to exactly teach it. It's compounded in so many years and some talent and context. So me coming to you and say, hey, explain to me in 3 words, in a sentence or 2, what got you there? So here's what I'd like to ask you. Give me maybe 2 or 3, what I'll call key perspectives that you had that have kind of gotten you, or that have been of profound value to where you got to today.
It's a great question. So I'm originally from the state of New Hampshire. Okay. And when you come from a small state, small town, you learn very quickly the power of community. right? People you go to school with in your middle school, first grade is the ones you go to high school with, right? And so how you treat people matters, and how you include people along your journey, and how you utilize the skills of others to build a team, or to create your reality. And so I really learned the power of community from my upbringing, and it's been a key part of my success. I think I understand how lonely leadership can be, and also success can be. And so I've really insulated my program and myself with insurances that it's not lonely, that it's a strong community behind us. I came in my first day on the job, and I realized that we needed to really increase our fan base. And now, there's a whole lot of people that care about Carolina basketball. And so they're all on this journey with me. So I would say one is connectedness, and connectivity, community, those type of things. I think another one is courage. I ask a lot of my players, in the sense that I'm asking them to achieve on the front line, right? So they are being judged daily by people who don't know their reality. And a loss can garner some negative emotions or whatnot. I always tell them, you're never as good as the world thinks, and never as bad. But I think the courage that I have hopefully led by, in that the fear of opportunity versus the fear of failure, but also the courage, therefore, that I empathetically can lead with understanding what I'm asking them to do every day, also requires daily courage. So connectivity and courage can go a whole long way. And then I think this is so overspoken, but it's continues to be undervalued, is that it takes an enormous amount of grit and strategy. Like, to create a game plan or a career plan takes an immense amount of strategy. And it takes time, and it takes thorough, and it takes grit, and it takes all those things that you can't just check things off or take a shortcut. And as I tell our players, as I link it to their life, there are these things that separate. And you've got to figure out what your separation is. And I think for me, I've always been willing to outwork, but strategically and thoughtfully. And so I think those are things that have been kind of some pillars that have helped me find success. But I've been most lucky at just, my staff would tell me, I think the players would tell me, what I'm best at is I'm really good at finding the right people. So if you look at my roster, look at my coaching staff, I've been really good at picking the people that I'm surrounded by. And it's paid off, because their excellence I'm a benefactor of.
I've only had a very brief amount of time to experience the basketball team in person and talk to some of the players. And there was just a sense of everyone enjoys being there. Mm. And how many times I got to imagine any one of us have ever walked into an environment where you walk in and you can see some people, they've got half a foot out the door already, if not a full foot out the door. I didn't get that sense here, right? I got the sense that everyone's there. They all play their part and their piece in the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And there's that clarity for them as to what they play. And maybe this is sort of the analogy we can make here, right? On a basketball team, a forward is not playing a shooting guard or a point guard, right? They're playing a forward. Center is not playing a shooting guard. They have different talents and different skill sets. Mm-hmm. Do you believe creating that clarity for people has allowed creation of that community and that team work ethic? Does that make sense?
It does, because clarity is one of our values that we have in our program. I think everybody operates better in clarity, even if the clarity is you're not good enough to help us on a regular basis. The clarity of that is you can wrap your head around and you can trust, right?
Well, hold on, wait. So play that back to me again. You said even if it means that you're not good enough to help us on a regular basis. Explore that a little bit for me. What do you mean?
Yeah. So if you're talking about a team and you've got some starters and you've got some kids that have reserve roles, and everyone wants to play more. Everybody, even the starters, right? If people don't know if they're questioning the why all the time, and they don't understand, and they don't feel like they know, there's an uncertainty that comes, and nobody operates well with uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Some can fake it better than others, but there's a clarity. So if I don't think you, for example, have the talent or are practicing well enough to be a difference maker, to take the time of somebody else, I'll say there are people they started ahead of you and they're getting further ahead of you based on, the performance that we're getting. And let's talk about that. How can I help you change that course? As opposed to just, some coaches, I think, are afraid to have those conversations. So kids feel detached, and as a leader, you have to welcome the hard conversations and recognize that clarity will connect you, actually, even though it can be seen as hard to have those clear conversations. We talk about, I think this is very true of business, teams, if you let it, the parts can get lost in the whole, right? And similarly, the whole, you can forget the parts, right? And we just are never going to let the parts get lost in the whole. So I'm actually coaching 12 individuals, and I'm promoting them to be a good team so that everybody's on their journey. And the clarity that requires is paramount to what we do. And so, yeah, we certainly talk about that. And then you talked about the joy of being there. Another thing we tell our team is be where you are. If you're in the library, be there. If you're in class, be there. If you're in practice, like, successful people are busy. As I say, let's not say the word busy. Let's say a life of abundance. We live a life of abundance. So you can't be multiple places at once. And I think one separator is the concentration and that comes from just being where you are, and so, yeah, I think on that Friday night that we met you, that's where we were. We were enjoying our experience with the people at Gigi's and our friends there, and that we weren't worried about anything else at that moment.
So I might suggest, and I think I heard a little hint in this direction, a player on a basketball team with the stature of UNC, wins and losses come with probably a lot more emotional charge from that community sometimes, from the press, the media, sports publications, right? So it's more than just an employee working for a company who worked for a big company, but they don't see that same level of spotlight, if you will. So the spotlights are brighter. They're stronger for these people. And where I'm going with this is just this idea that you're telling them, hey, look, you're here for a purpose. You're here for a cause. You're here to be present in the right now. And here's the part that you play. There are times when they make mistakes. How do you deal with it? How do you coach through that when someone is got to make that shot at the end of the second quarter, before the half? It doesn't happen. How do you deal with that?
I think it depends on the origin of the mistake, right? It's a mistake. If a mistake is that you slept through class and it's the first time in 2.5 years you've been late to anything, there's a whole lot of grace in that moment, right? If it's a mistake that the origin comes from carelessness, repeated carelessness, we address that in a certain way, right? If it's a mistake that comes from, hey, we were, in our timeout, we had talked about that you were going to do this or pass here and then cut there, and you just went out and did your own thing because you were being careless, then that mistake gets greeted with, we have to, there's an element of trust that we exhibited and wasn't rewarded, right? Or was it out of fear? So the defense did something that made you panic and do something else. Well, that becomes a skill issue. We have to help you become more skilled so that you can handle duress better and still execute. So I would say the mistakes with this age group, as I tell them all the time, this age group comes with being let down. If you're worried about letting me down, you're worried about the wrong things. It will happen. Our goal is to ensure that the origin of your mistakes are not repeated, and they come from a place where you can grow from it.
I like this because I always talk about this idea of failure velocity, right? When somebody comes into my team, my company, I always talk about, don't worry about being perfect, because if you were perfect already, I'll be working for you. What I'm more interested in you is starting to see that you're quickly learning what those behaviors and those traits that you have, and you're starting to shift and shape those behaviors to be in alignment with where we're going. I think I'm hearing some congruence in what we're saying here, right?
Yeah.
The intent of the behavior, was it an endemic or underlying behavior that's there? Are they starting to address it? And you got to take the time to understand the story behind it before you can exact a change in direction, if you will, right?
Exactly. And as your organization's bigger, that's what therein lies how it's hard, right? For me to really know you and understand why is it's beyond surface level times that many people, right? So I only have 12 players. I also have 12 staff people, and then an ordinary amount of people underneath them that are not directly related to my program, but have their hands touched in it. So yeah, there's just a lot of people that you have to ensure that their part matters. and that just takes time. So being a leader is not a time clock. It's not a time card job.
So data is something that we hear about all over the place. I mean, you can't pick up your phone without getting data. You can't go to the store without some sort of data being collected or being harvested somewhere. Data is kind of at the heart of everything. Do you feel like that's a true statement in athletics? I mean, I feel like stats have been there for a long time, but is data just kind of becoming almost an all-encompassing, overwhelming component of what you do and part of your role?
I mean, what's available to you is unbelievable. Everything from lineup efficiencies. So I can actually deduce how many points per game or points per possession we're getting with a certain lineup in versus another one, and so there's an unlimited amount of data that we are able to get pretty easily. We have people live coding our practices so that after practice, I can have all of your possessions already tagged out, or all of our themes. But I think that's there's a lot of information coming in, and at least for me, I can't ignore the fact that there's a human element to all those things that are at play. So I'm actually trying to synthesize very quickly and in live time data with the human element of it. And sometimes you get that really right, and you have the right kid in at the right time, and they make the right shot. And other times you don't get it so right. But the data certainly points you and gets you in the ballpark. And then the great coaches are able to hit the home run in the ballpark.
So I want to make a statement here and see how much this kind of reflects kind of the way you think or you believe. I mean, I go into companies all the time. To me, it really kind of doesn't matter what the data is, but we kind of pull that all together so we can build a holistic picture. Maybe I talk about all the time. Can you see the emotion of your people in the data? Do you think there's an element of that as well? I mean, do you all and when you're looking at the data, you're trying to understand the person behind it, the behaviors, are there the mistakes, that kind of the origin of it, where it came from? Is that what you're looking for in all of that?
Well, I think our sport is so pressure focused. And so who operates, you obviously want to put your kids in pressure situations every day. So who operates, whose behavior remains consistent regardless of the pressure, right? Some people play better with pressure, some play worse, and some play the same, right? And that's what the human element that you're synthesizing while you're looking at the data that is presented. And conversely, who on the other team is the most susceptible to pressure, and if they're in, how can you pick on that? So people say as I'm coaching, I'm very professorial looking, and it's not for the camera. It's because I'm thinking of a lot of information at one time and trying to synthesize it. But I do think emotion, just like people don't operate with clarity, I think people that allow their emotions to dictate their decisions typically marry well, right? But they don't always make the right decisions in crunch time. And so again, being able to compartmentalize when you're on the clock professionally, and how important it is to keep emotion as a consistency so that you can make the right decisions with your brain. Whereas in your personal life, you actually want to get your brain off and you want to instead fill your heart, right? So they're different.
Well, and maybe let me tune a little bit more of what I was saying there. The idea of a leader being able to leader a coach, because I think ultimately leader and coach are very similar term, right? It's being able to understand sort of the emotions that are going through the head of that player, right? Being able to perceive that. If you can see that, gosh, this is a high pressure situation for them. It may not be for somebody else. Does that resonate?
Yes, exactly. That who operates well in that environment and who doesn't. You have to know that for sure. And the only way you know that is to put them in that situation and to be watching. Leaders watch, they listen a lot. So I think a lot of, again, in the commercial world, in the business world, there's so many people who got all this information, but they're trying to figure out I always talk about this idea of, can you start telling the story of what's happening and create the ending that you want? Do you do some of that as well? Is it kind of when you're doing that professorial piece or face, right? Is that what you're looking at? Hey, where is this leading to, and what can I influence to change that outcome? Is that the way you're kind of approaching it? Interesting. I think for our sport, it's really possession by possession.
Okay.
It's such a fluid game, but if I think too far ahead on, some coaches spend hours focusing on, if we're down 1 with 10 seconds left and the ball's on the sideline. It's like that will happen maybe twice all year. And there's so many other variables that could impact that play. You have to figure out where your time is best spent, right? So I think really it's same thing with how I lead my group on a day-to-day basis in the emotions, to your point, of our players. It really is minute to minute. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part, is you can't get ahead. I would love to plan my whole first month of practice today, because then all I would have to do the first month is just do all the other parts of the job, and practices would be already planned. That's a big part of my day, right? But it's, for me, it's every day, because it's taking in the new information with all the human element and then creating the right plan, and then doing that again the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. So I think I'm very much more present. I don't think too much about, I'm not great at the goal setting of, boy, are we going to win? Are we going to go to a Sweet 16 or Final Four this year? It's just, or who's going to start this year? The media Zoom was just asking me about that. It's like, I haven't spent 1 minute thinking about that. It's where are we right now? Who's getting better? How's our bodies? Are leaders in our program emerging? I mean, all the things that matter right now. We're going to worry about that first.
So we talked about this earlier, about the power of community and courage and this grit as sort of the key perspectives. What do you think you've become really good at in the course of this career that maybe was not a natural talent? Because I think leadership is about growth as an individual. Where have you grown? What have you become really good at?
It's a great question. I find fascinating about the professional world is you're good at something, and then you get elevated to a job that's totally different than the job you were good at, right? So let's say you're a banker, you're managing money and you're really good at it. And then you get taken off the desk because now you're going to manage people. It's like, wait, I was really good at that job, right? So I think what I found fascinating is I had a lot of success at Princeton coaching Ivy League kids, ending in the top 20 every year, non-scholarship Division I, competing against scholarship athletes, all that. And then I come here and it's a totally different job. It's just a totally different gig. And so I think I've done a good job at learning quickly and not repeating mistakes or processing in the moment to adapt. I think that's something I've had to, it's not a certain way to do. You can't coach basketball a certain way all the time. It's just not that kind of, not every school you can do it the same way, not every kid, not every team. And so I think I've learned how to be really adaptive quickly.
So I heard, I had a mentor, he told me once, he said, Vinay, there is no failing, there's only learning and winning. Does that sound like that resonates with you in terms of kind of how you look at things as well? 100%.
I always say failure is just not an option. So you either succeed or you just keep trying. There is no variable or no reality where you fail. It's just, I just tell my kids, it's not even in our vocabulary.
So tell me a story about that. Talk me through a situation like that where you're kind of just beating your head against a wall, trying to make something happen, maybe with a team or formation, a setup, a lineup. What happened?
Because of the fact that every either loss or holding pattern, when my players aren't getting better, I think of that as failure every day. So I address it in the moment so much that I don't let it linger.
Okay.
So it's almost to try to think of that answer. I think I'm getting at how much I truly embody and live the motto that your mentor told you. And that is, I'm either winning or I'm still going. Like I'm not failure or lack of success is an end point. And I'm just never in that state. So we fail a lot in this business, and it's not like you lose recruits and all the things that happen all the time. But it's a part of my process. It's not an end point. So I can't even, to your point, your mentor's point, I can't even think of an example because it's not in my vocabulary.
Yeah, that's funny when I talk to my kids. I mean, you met them, but I say that every single day I walk away having learned something new, that I just put another brick in the wall, that I'm just kind of building that foundation to getting higher. It may not have been the brick that I expected for that day.
Yes, exactly.
But it was still a brick.
I say to my kids, I have 3 small ones, and I say to them, it's like our family mantra. I say, be kind, be grateful, and do your best. And then they're young enough, they're 8 and 6, where they just sort of say it. I always say, Mom loves you. And then they say those 3 things. And then I say, at the end of some days, I was at least those 3 things every day. I was kind, I was grateful, and I did my best. Doesn't mean I'm winning, but I did those 3 things every day.
I want to ask you a question that may seem like it's coming a little from left field here. And that is, we talked again about power of community, courage, and grit. I found that for myself, as trying to become a better leader is actually about me being more and more human, right? And humane to people around me. Instead of coming in and saying, hey, here's the answer, saying, so I got an idea where I want to go. Is that interesting? Can we talk about that? And they say, yeah, what do you want to talk about? So I think we can improve your 3-point percentage, right? Or your on-time skills or something like that. Do you feel like has any truth to it in your world in terms of kind of being more human has made you better as a person, as a coach?
1,000%, a better recruiter, a better coach. And I love how you worded that, right? If you come in and if a kid comes in and I say, you're shooting at such a low percentage, and I can show them a graphic of them shooting at a low percentage, that's not open for discussion, right? So then it's really not that I'm not with you. I'm at you, right? So similarly, the conversation that I would have would be along the lines of, you're not shooting at a level that's helping us. So, and you put the time in, or do you put the time in? If most of the time the answer is yes. So it's what's going through your mind. Is there another way we can do this? Right. Or those type of things. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think I'm really authentic to that. I'm in charge of, I have a piece of this program. It is not mine. Right. And so my job, just like everybody has a job, my job is to bring out the best in other people. And I'm not always going to get that right. Right. But you're going to get my best, and you're going to get, I'm with you all the time. Right. I think those are things for sure.
Any stories you can share around that, kind of where someone was kind of having a tough time and you just kind of, because on the other side of that, I'm assuming sort of the assumption I think everyone's looking here is there's a better outcome. Is that always the case, or something like that?
I actually have a great story on that. So we were 30-0, right? So let me stay at the stage for you here. 2015, we're 30-0. There are 360 Division I programs in the country. All of them are full scholarship, meaning every single player on the team is getting their entire education paid for, except for the 8 schools in the Ivy League. And those are all need-based, right? So that's an incredible disadvantage, right? So we finished the year 30-0, had beaten Michigan by 30, you name it, right? We're 13th in the country. And we're going to play in the NCAA tournament. Now, it just so happened I coached Obama's niece. And we're playing the first round of the NCAA tournament at Maryland. And I had just been in the locker room and saying, guys, there's going to be 18,000 fans there. About 300 are going to be ours. And I put my hands over my eyes and as binoculars, and I was like, but I got you. I got you. That's all you need to worry about. You look at me when you need something. I got you. Well, Obama is coming to the game. First time ever a sitting president in an NCAA athletic event, an NCAA tournament. So he walks by, he can only get there about a minute and a half before because of all the security. And he walks by the opposing team's bench, and I look over, and the opposing team coach did what every American should do, introduce themselves to the leader of the free world, right? And then he's got about 40 more feet until he gets to behind my bench, where he's sitting about 3 rows behind my bench. I knew exactly where his seat's going to be and all that. It's going to meet my kids, the whole thing. Well, that's about a minute left on the clock, right? That's about when my players start running towards me. And I just told them, I got you. So in that moment, I had to make a quick decision. If they run towards me and my back is turned and I'm shaking hands with the president, then I just lied. So I didn't say hello, just focused on my team. And so the first question I get after the game from the media was, what was it like to meet the president? I said, well, I didn't. You're going to have to ask my 5-month-olds, because they did. I said, but we won the game. Right. So the next game, now we're playing in the round of 32. I had felt like if we had gone 30-0, ranked 13th, and lost in the first round of the tournament, we just set back a league that I'd spent my whole life building. Right. Then we go to the second round. We're playing Maryland. We played Green Bay. We're playing Maryland now at home, their place. And the 2 most recent Supreme Court justices at the time were Sotomayor and Kagan. Both were Princeton grads. So they were coming to the game. And they had asked me, how can I go to the game? They'd emailed me, and I told them, you just walk in and go where your seat tells you. I don't know how else to say that, right? So I tried very nicely to be like, you got this. Well, sure enough, I'd come out an hour and 10 minutes before the game, and they're sitting right behind our bench. So I was like, well, hey, I'm glad you guys found your seat, because there had been so much back and forth about how to get to this game, right? Well, we lost that game. So as I say, stay locked into your journey and don't worry about everything else. But I tell that story because I think that's an example, I think, of an authentic experience where we were up against it, right? I'm not saying that contributed to winning, but it does contribute to the culture we built, and it accentuates it in every way.
So I actually really appreciate that story, because I think the stakes seem like they're a little bit higher because of the people that were there and sort of the gravity of the choice that you had to make. One of the biggest challenges that I find for myself, and I'll just talk about myself, is I wake up many times in the middle of the night wondering if I'm making the right choice, if I'm heading in the right direction, do I have the right people, am I giving the right space? Does that happen to you as well?
No, I think what happens to me, my wake point, your worry list is one thing. Mine is, are my people feeling connected?
Okay.
And so whether that's my giant staff, right? I've got a huge staff to manage. Do they all feel connected to the whole and connected to me? And I hate to say it, I think oftentimes the answer is no, right? Because my players would say yes, and that's my primary priority. My recruits, I think, would say yes, and that's a primary priority. And so unfortunately, who sometimes loses out are the ones that you're closest to, which is your staff. So that's the thing that probably keeps me up the most in terms of as a leader.
And let me kind of delve into that. Feeling connected, as in, do they feel like they're, maybe going back to this word clarity, do they feel like they're connected into the mission of where we're going? They're invested, they're invited into that future that we all want to be part of. Is that a fair way to say that?
Yeah. No, because I think they are in that I think they know they are, because maybe we've divided up some recruits. So they're directly responsible for their list as I'm directly responsible for mine, or they have a positional responsibility. So you might work with the guards or the post. But because of the autonomy that I give my staff, and they go and do the job, right? It's because I'm not micromanaging, right? I'm not always in the loop, right? And vice versa, and so who is there sometimes to connect all the dots, except in, a biweekly or a weekly meeting, right? But on a day-to-day basis, it's not reasonable to put all 12 of us in one room. And so are they fulfilled in doing their piece? And the answer is probably yes, because they've all stuck around, but it's something that does keep me up and worry me a little bit.
I was kind of, as you were talking there, I was kind of walking back through a little bit of the bio of some of the wins that you've had. I don't know that I'll ever get a chance to experience some of the feelings that you've had winning championships. What does it feel like? What can you give me a sense of? I mean, I know what the pictures look like and what the stadium and the environment is, but how does it feel inside to get there? What are the sort of the emotions inside of you?
Oh gosh, so many. One is just the true joy that comes from a completed journey, and not all journeys end well. So when they do end well, it's just that joy that comes with it. And also the feeling of completion can also come with it an enormous sense of fatigue in the moment. Right? Like all of your energy has been to this, and then, we did it, and not relief, but fatigue. And then knowing that you feel in that moment that, you will forever be linked to this group of people. And you had a role in giving them a memory that will always be in their top 3, probably of their whole life, and all the things that created that just are like flooding in. And that's why you see these pros who have tears. I mean, it's just, the hard days, the hard conversations, the losses, all the things are just every day. The Christmas Day practice, the Thanksgiving Day practice. I mean, all the things are just flooding in of like, oh my gosh, it's all contributed to this. So it's a lot of different emotions kind of all at once, and it happens on top of and immediately after a totally different emotion of locked in, of having to be ready to be at your best to make an adjustment, of the fatigue that in the mental energy that takes. So it's also, I think, the combination of like how quickly the emotion changes. It doesn't even give your body a chance to ease into it. You're just like one or the next is like this.
And what does the next day look like?
Exactly. Fatigue, incredible fatigue. I think with incredible enthusiasm too. You've got, especially this day and age with all the social media and how easily accessible people are. I mean, when we made the NCAA tournament, so we're on the selection show and we got a 5 seed and all that. I mean, I had over 300 text messages in the course of, it's just so much. You can't get back to everybody, right? Or you make the Sweet 16 and you're just buzzing all night, and you want to get back to these people who, as I said, community that have been your guardrails as you've been on the journey. But yet it's also like it's over, and I'm so results oriented, I'm so journey oriented that when it's over, that means the next one is starting. And so there's also like, oh my God, we got to start over and begin again. It's just kind of all those things all at once that it's a lot. a unique time in my life every year for sure.
So, see, we've got a couple more minutes here. I always love to think in terms of things that nuggets that people can kind of take home and do. If you were to, based on maybe some part of our conversation, sort of your learnings and kind of the success level of success and failures that you've had along the way to get to that success, the learnings, right? Not the failures. If you were to distill to maybe 2 or 3 things, what were the things that you would leave someone with to say, hey, maybe shift this mindset, try this approach? What were the things that you would leave with the folks?
I think gratitude is underused, right? And really, whether it's every day writing down 1, 2, or 3 gratitudes to start your day, it sounds kind of roofy, but it realigns your thinking into your life of abundance versus busy, or you're full versus fatigued, right? All those kind of words matter things. So I think gratitude is really good for people of all ages to start with and lead with. I think another is that understanding the finiteness of our life, right? That's such an amazingly powerful thing for me, that my life is really, I got one of them and it's really finite. And so it's such an opportunity every day to not waste it, because there's every day that goes by, you have less ahead, you're one day further away. Right. And so I think the gratitude with the finiteness of your life, and then just the uniqueness, good and bad. I think we can be better to ourselves we can meet ourselves with grace, to know that my strengths and weaknesses are a part of who I am. And don't try to get rid of all your weaknesses, and don't try to accentuate only your strengths. Like, it's just a part of who we are. Be aware and be evolving, but give yourself a whole lot of grace, because there's only one of you out there.
Yeah, this is I like it. I was kind of just reading back through the title here. It says coaching is about having a clear and common cause that each player can be part of. And I think what I've sort of synthesized from a lot of what you're saying here is it's about creating this space for people to say, hey, I want to be part of this. I want to help move the load. I want to help be part of that vision. Giving them the attention, presence, not being somewhere else while you're talking to them, focusing in on them. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, the greatest gift I can ever give to anybody is my time, because I've got a limited amount of it. Party to these, parting thoughts you had here. So it seems like you're very intentional with people. You give them the space to say, yeah, I'm struggling here, and that's okay, because that's what I'm here for, to kind of help you get beyond that. And I don't know that I heard that you necessarily always have the answer, but we'll get there together. It's kind of what I hear is sort of the undertone. Is that all kind of good summarization?
Really good. Yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah. This has really been helpful. I hope anybody who's listening to this podcast, you've had an opportunity to comment and type in comments. I would love to share that with Courtney throughout the course of this. I think there's so much to learn here from how you can run a business better and be more effective as a leader just by leaning into your people.
Exactly. And that's not, and it will never be the wrong choice. We make a lot of wrong choices when you're presented with so many every day. It's never the wrong choice to invest in your people.
Never the wrong choice to invest in your people. I think those are words to live by.